Good morning, Dan and Amy coming to you live from Mid-States Glass and Metal in Niles, part of our AM 560 Signature Bank Business Tour. And market is reacting to Donald Trump's address last night. Dow surges past 21,000 for the first time ever, just a month after eclipsing the 20,000 mark. So the market reacting positively. Now you got to translate rhetoric into legislative reality, but certainly encouraged by what Donald Trump had to say.
And even some diehard liberals reacting to Trump's speech last night, and positive reaction at that. Here's Van Jones from CNN.
He became president of the United States in that moment, period. There are a lot of people who have a lot of reason to be frustrated with him, to be fearful of him. But that was one of the most extraordinary moments you have ever seen in American politics, period.
Wow.
And he's talking, of course, about the recognition of Ryan Owens' widow by Trump, which precipitated a 3-minute, 4-minute, I don't know, standing ovation and applause, of course, and well-deserved. And Trump also talked about Chicago. Chicago was invoked again, talking about nearly 800 murders last year, 4,000 shootings. Rahm Emanuel responding to the president, invoking Chicago and the systemic violence problem we have here. Does the president care enough about violence in our city to do more than talk or tweet about it? This from the mayor of Chicago the past 6 years, who's lorded over a carnage in this city not seen for the previous 30. I mean,
what has he done?
The Stones, yeah. Well, hey,
I mean, what have you accomplished to stop the homicide rate from escalating to unbelievable heights?
And oh, by the way, who's in charge of the city of Chicago? Is it the President of the United States or is it the mayor? What about the civilian political leadership of the city? You know, those that have the fiduciary and moral and legal authority to address things like street violence. I mean, it's just the blame shifting in this godforsaken city is incredible. But maybe Trump can help wake up some of the Stockholm Syndrome sufferers in Chicago to change out that civilian political leadership. I'll tell you what, somebody that's providing political leadership as well as law enforcement leadership and just to the north of us on the other side of the cheese curtain, in addition to nationally, not just in Wisconsin, not just in Milwaukee County, is our friend Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke, the author of the new book, Cop Under Fire, Moving Beyond the Hashtags of Race, Crime, and Politics for a Better America. Sheriff Clarke, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Dan, Amy, it's my pleasure to be on with you. It's kind of interesting. I was listening to your commentary on Mayor Rahm Emanuel. You're right. He has stood pat. He's done nothing in his city. He's ultimately responsible. The buck stops with him, but the fact that he won't do anything has not stopped President Trump from realizing it's a great American city. Chicago is. It remains a great American city, but in about 5 or 6 neighborhoods, there's been a collapse of the social order. It's one of the things that I talk about in my new book, which reached the bookstores yesterday, Cop Under Fire. And I don't specifically talk about Chicago, but I talk about the cultural rot, the cultural dysfunction that goes on in too many of our urban centers, specifically black neighborhoods. And I'm not talking about the entire black neighborhood. I'm talking about a black community. I'm talking about the emergence of a subset, the underclass, and the cultural rot, dysfunction that exists there. But I've said this, I talk about it in the book as well, that it is high time in America that in these struggling cities like Baltimore, like Milwaukee, like Detroit, like Chicago, and other areas, that the black political leadership, we really need it from everybody, but specifically the black political leadership needs to develop the moral courage to stand up and shame and shun some of this dysfunctional behavior that we see, gang involvement, alcohol and drug abuse, fathering kids out of wedlock that these men have no intention on raising into productive citizens, staying consistently out of the workforce, school failure, things like that. That's the cultural dysfunction. That's the cultural rot that needs to be shamed and shunned. But instead, the black political leadership specifically stands by, and they act as if these behaviors are something that should be embraced, and that they would advance the culture when in fact this stuff is culturally stunting.
Well, hypothetically speaking, if you were in charge, if you were superintendent of the Chicago Police Department, what would you do or ideas that you would have to help stop the violence and help stop this huge homicide rate that we have?
All right, and that's a very good question. First thing you do is you have to put together a strategic plan, an operational plan to succeed. You have to empower the fine men and women of the Chicago Police Department to stay within the Constitution, stay within the policies, the code of ethics, so on and so forth. And you have to allow them to do what they know how to do. They're well-trained, they're well-educated, and they have to go out and once again put the pedal to the metal, put the fear of God into the criminal element. In many of these neighborhoods, the criminal element is in charge. The police have, and I understand why, but they're not as assertive as we need them to be when we had the great crime decline of the 90s and the early 2000s, because we empowered our police using the law, not going outside the law. And sometimes in this unpredictable world that a law enforcement officer resides in, and I talk about this in the book, Cop Under Fire, things can go horribly wrong. Things can go tragically wrong. Sometimes through no fault of the officer. Sometimes people step outside that code of ethics and the Constitution, and they'll do some abhorrent things. And then we need to jump all over that and make sure that we get rid of people who aren't a good fit for this profession. But for the most part, as you know, 99.9% of the men and women who wear that badge, who wear that star of the Chicago Police Department, they know how to do this. And once you do that, the community will once again embrace what's going on, because they're down there risking their lives for the betterment of other people. So I would empower the police. I would utilize these, put together a task force, the State Attorney General's office, and the United States Department of Justice, and we utilize federal resources, one of them being federal statutes, because there's more certainty in getting these career criminals charged and off the street for a longer period of time than these state courts have proven that they have the will to do. They've fallen prey to all of this nonsense about implicit bias, that the criminal justice system is inherently racist, that these social engineering experiments of community corrections and second chances, it's not a second chance program anyway, it's misnamed to mislead people. We have to get rid of that as well, and that's why I'd use the federal resources. The federal government can provide money, which takes the strain off the Chicago taxpayers to do this sort of thing. I would do warrant sweeps. I would do traffic stops for violation of the law. Okay, you violate a traffic law, the cop can pull you over. You just start the question. Okay, sir, you ran that red light, ma'am. You did this. Can I see your license and registration? Where are you employed? You get to ask those kind of questions. You're going to find some vehicles, a lot of them, not all of them, but you're going to find a lot of vehicles that have people wanted on serious felony warrants, so you can immediately get them off the street, arrest them on the warrant. You're going to find drugs. You're going to find stashes of weapons that are either on their way to or from a drive-by shooting or a carjacking or a holdup. It's going to be a treasure trove of criminal activity off the traffic stop. So those are some of the things I do, and I could expand on it more, but in the essence of time here, just to give you an idea how this is doable. This is doable starting today, but until they put together an operational plan, and that's the superintendent's job. You can sit up there and say, well, we know this, it's a few gang members. That's all nonsense. Get out there with an operational plan. The public will see it. As long as you stay within the Constitution, the public will get behind it. Next thing you know, you'll beat the criminal element back, and Chicago can return to its glory days.
Yeah, I mean, of course it's doable, and this isn't happening in every big city in America. It's happening in Chicago. I want to get your viewpoint on something else Donald Trump said, because obviously you're a law enforcement expert and you've spoken eloquently on that topic, but you don't limit yourself to those topics. And Trump raised the issue again of K through 12 education, of opportunity to good schools being the civil rights issue of our time. He has intimated that he would support some kind of school choice measure coming down from the federal level to go around, to provide resources to go around civilian political leadership in states like Illinois that are opposed to school choice, that are pro-discrimination of children based on their household income and their address, like in Illinois.
Yeah,
And so I wonder what your viewpoint is on the importance of providing educational opportunities for children that don't otherwise have the resources to access them in places like Chicago.
Sure. Education has always been the traditional vehicle to upward mobility in the United States of America, but it's even more so now in the information age and the tech age. And it is a fact that our urban public school systems, our K-12, Chicago Public Schools, Milwaukee Public Schools, these things have fallen short. These things are in a state of disarray. They're no longer educating kids. These kids are passed on from grade to grade. Some of these policies like social promotion, even though the kid can't read at fourth grade level, they pass them on to the fifth grade. They pass them on to the sixth grade. He's still reading, or she's reading at a third grade level. This is a disservice. There are many good parents in the city of Chicago whose kids are shackled to these failing school systems, and there's nowhere to turn. The only lifeline would be like a voucher program, which would give that parent an opportunity to get their kid out of that failing school and get it into a better school, and to take advantage of things like charter schools so that that kid can become functionally literate again and reach their God-given potential. But you and I know that these large K-12 urban school systems are laboratories of indoctrination for the left. They're also vote-rich. This is part of their political base, part of their political power, the teachers' union. So these, things like mayors and whatnot are married to that stuff instead of the education of their kids. Donald Trump understands that. He supports school choice, President Trump, and charter schools, the use of, and not as a panacea, but to empower parents. The goal is, because I know I've heard the stories. There's some charter schools that are failing, and some choice schools or voucher schools that are. That's fine. Well, then that parent, though, still has that option to get that kid out of that failing voucher school or that failing charter school and get them into the school that they think best serves the needs of their child. But right now, these parents don't have that leverage. They don't have that power. So, Donald Trump, President Trump, understands that until we empower parents to make decisions over the education of their child, it's going to be very tough for these kids that are shackled to these failing schools.
Yeah, and all you have to do is look at the state of Florida, where you got nearly 100,000 kids, 70% of whom are minority, 30% overall black, 40% Latino, and the success they're finding educating the kids actually that were falling behind in public schools, not the cream skimming that the opponents of school choice allege. So there's real-world examples. Milwaukee is another example, of course, is that school choice for 2.5 decades. He is Sheriff David Clarke, Milwaukee County Sheriff, of course, the author of the new book. You got to pick it up, Cop Under Fire, Moving Beyond the Hashtags of Race, Crime, and Politics for a Better America is the book. And, boy, we could have used Sheriff David Clarke at that New Trier race seminar yesterday. Yeah. Oh, wouldn't that have been interesting to respond to Monica Trinidad's session in that seminar, how Chicago cops are urban terrorists committing genocide. I would have loved to get David Clarke's response for the kids. Wouldn't that have been fun, Sheriff Clarke?
Yeah, that would have been fun. A counter narrative to that nonsense, that false narrative about Chicago's finest.
All right, he is Sheriff David Clarke. Sheriff Clarke, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And always an honor. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect.